Here is your crashiest crash course in all of Lean Six Sigma history. We need to identify the customer first and foremost, and the process. So what is the process that we're looking at? Who is the customer in that process? So it might not be somebody who's paying us as we would, if you go to Burger King, our customer is a little clear. Sometimes your customer is going to be other departments. Sometimes it's going to be external partners, right? Who is your customer? And then try to define value for them in your process. So is what you're doing moving the ball forward? Is it adding important information, changing it, that sort of thing? Is it being done right the first time, in the sense that, are we doing QA work? Is this rechecking things, that sort of thing? So it should not be rework, and the customer must be willing to pay for it. As I mentioned, they might not be giving us money for the item, but they're definitely going to raise a flag if we do it incorrectly, right? That's what we're looking for. Does the customer, are they going to notice? Are they going to say something to you? Are they going to return it as a defective unit or incorrect form, etc., if it is not done a certain way? If you're not sure if it's one of these customer value add items, you can call it out as a waste. You can call it this downtime acronym here: defects, overproduction, waiting, non-utilized talent, transportation, inventory, motion, and extra processing. Think of it this way. If it is a step that we can reduce the amount of time we spend on it, then it probably has some waste in it, right? There might be some value there, but it probably has waste inherent to the process. If you can reduce the amount of time spent on it, not via sprinting, but via creative solutions, right? Lean Six Sigma, of course, is Lean focusing on speed, Six Sigma improving accuracy. Lean Six Sigma is the Frankenstein between the two. It's actually quite effective. Not every project has to be a Lean Six Sigma. They can focus on Lean tools, they can focus on Six Sigma tools. And then within the DMAIC methodology, define, measure, analyze, improve, and control, there are a number of tools that you can use as we go through this process. So what do we do first? I put this question to the group. We have a project. That's all the information you have so far. What's the first step?
Define the problem.
Good.
Define the problem.
Define the process. Yes, I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing you, but yes, define the process. So for that, we have our sponsor, Lakeisha. Thank you for joining us today, Lakeisha. I would love to get some insight on what the process is. So what I'm going to use, Lakeisha, is this tool called the Process Charter. It's going to help us capture what is the process that we're looking at, what are the sort of the start and end points, what are the triggers, what's in scope and what's out of scope in terms of like, what things are outside our ability to control, what things might impact the process that we should consider, those sorts of things, and then what's your timeline. So what I want for us to do as a hive mind, as a group, is to, again, use the hand raise function. And then I want you to ask our sponsor the questions that will help us fill out this document. Two peanuts were walking down the street and one was assaulted. I will fill the time with dad jokes. Please do not be afraid. There you go. Amy, thank you.
Lakeisha, what is the name of the process that you're looking to improve?
Reimbursement for staff expenses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Other questions for our sponsor? Laura Lynn.
Can you tell us a little bit about the process that that we're trying to improve?
Yes. To give you a little bit of background, our office, what we do is we outreach to other departments. And what we do is when we go out, we set up tables to, and we have swag to get staff to sign up for additional health programs like yoga and counseling, exercise. And also the staff has to, they have to track any costs paid out of their own pocket.
So just to clarify, so this, so your area does outreach to other areas, and as part of that, your employees are purchasing swag or other items for this outreach and then need to be reimbursed for those items. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that is correct. So to give you like an example, like when they go to these different events, sometimes they have to pay for parking. So parking would be like an expense.
The question of swag came up. Do they pay for the swag? Are they buying that out of their own pocket?
The swag is actually ordered separately in bulk.
And they're not paying for that out of their own pocket?
No.
Okay, perfect. Kumar?
What's the process to, I mean, how do you know what's allowed and what's not allowed in terms of expenses? How do you capture that?
I was just gonna say, we have a guideline of expenses that are approved and expenses that are not approved.
I think so. How are they submitted? Like when they have
Right.
these expenses, they're paying out of pockets. What's it look like at a high level for what they're doing?
The staff, they submit the expenses daily in the system that we use called Existence.
Like existence, like that?
Yes.
Okay. And then what's next?
They by the end of each pay period, the staff submits a reimbursement summary request in the system.
Cool. What are some of the problems you're encountering in the process? I got a question here from Bergen. And then Kumar, do you still have another question, or is that left over from the last question? Just be sure you do the lower hand. Perfect. So what are some of the problems you're experiencing in the process? What are some of the pain points?
Yeah, so the process outcomes are varied and it just takes so long. And there's rumors going around that we have a lawsuit. And pretty much each role blames each other, and nobody seems to know what the end process is.
I highly encourage folks to come off mute and ask these questions. I love seeing them in the chat, but I have 4 screens going around me, so I'm going to reiterate, please speak up. What is your proposed timeline for starting and completing this process improvement?
I actually need recommendations today, and we're looking to implement before the start of the upcoming month.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
What is the lawsuit about?
You know what? I don't have all that information. I just know that there's one swirling around.
Awesome. Thank you. So this has been really fruitful. Thank you for helping us go through and define a little bit about our process. Lakeisha, I was hoping you could provide us access to, I want to have a kickoff meeting with the subject matter experts in this process. So do you think that'd be possible? Could we set something up in say like 30 seconds where we have a kickoff meeting? Is that possible?
That's possible.
All right,
Absolutely.
cool. Let's go ahead and do that. So let's gather our subject matter experts in the space. First thing I do when I have a kickoff meeting is I ground them in Lean Six Sigma. I let them know we're not judging them. This is about the process, not about the people. So hopefully no one is sort of afraid to share the outcomes of their process, the pain points in their process. This is for process awareness and so that everyone is on the same page. All right, am I sharing my whiteboard? I think I am. Yes, thumbs up, perfect. Okay, so
we have the Maic up.
Yep.
yes, perfect. Yes,
Alright,
this is
okay.
my whiteboard. Okay, so we went through and we're going to continue working through define for a minute. What I'd like to do is I'd like to gain a shared understanding between all of us of what the process is, and what I'll be using is a tool called the value stream map. So it's kind of like a process map, only we're not going to go through and do decision diamonds, up and downs and choices. We're going to go through and say, in a sort of happy flow, what does this process look like? Okay. So who is the first person in this process?
That would be me, Jackie. I'm a staff member. That's my role.
Okay, so staff. Perfect. What is your process here?
So I submit expenses daily, and
Okay.
then I have a bi-weekly expenses approval that I submit. So the daily ones they happen like 10 times, and then the bi-weekly happens.
Ooh. Oh, that's right, because there's 10 working days, right? Monday to
Mhm.
Friday twice. Okay, perfect. So there we go. We got the staff. And then you said you also have a bi-weekly submit?
Yes, I submit bi-weekly expenses approval.
Cool. For the daily submit, about how long does that take? For the each
6
time you do a daily?
minutes.
6 minutes. I imagine there's going to be some conversion here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this to hours. 6 minutes is about 1/10 of an hour, so 0.1 hours. Awesome. And then for the bi-weekly submit, about how long does that take you to do?
6 minutes as well.
Okay,
one.
so it's about the same. And you're using the system that we heard about, the existence system, is that right?
Yes.
Awesome. What does the process look like for the biweekly submit? What are you doing in each of these in the for the biweekly?
For biweekly, I approve the totals and include a business need for the expenses.
Approve totals, totals, and then include business need.
Yes.
This is like a justification, like I'm doing this because I have to go to XYZ space. Okay, let me fix my camera here. Include business need. What about in the daily submit?
So for the daily ones, I upload receipts and I enter the totals. And we also have a hand raised from Laurelyn.
Laurelyn, please ask your question.
So for the bi-weekly one, you mentioned that it's approved. So is that approved by you as the employee who's submitting them, or who is that approved by?
It's me. So I'm approving the totals that I've entered, make sure they're all correct, and then put in the business need, and then it'll be routed to another person.
And this sounds like it's at this point, I mean, at some point it goes into the procurement system or the IPPS system, but at this point, it sounds like all of this is maybe an internal departmental process that you guys have created. Is that right?
So I would be entering this information in our existence system that we have for tracking our expenses.
Yeah, I think to your question, Laurelyn, she wouldn't really know at this point kind of what the impetus is for the process, or if it was departmental, if other units are doing it, that sort of thing. Lakeisha, do you know if like how many staff are doing this particular process, or how many are involved overall here?
Yes, so we have 8 staff in each department.
Okay, 8 staff in a department, right? How many departments do you have?
We have 5 departments.
5 departments. Okay, any other granulars here, or is that it?
It's 5 departments in each unit, and we have 2 units.
And then there's 2 units. Okay, so totals 8 times 5 times 2, it's 40. This is 80 total staff are doing this process, or at least the submission, right?
That's correct.
Cool. All right, so I'm going to do the next one, but then I'm going to ask that somebody else sort of takes the microphone for the moment. So I will model the behavior, and I want everyone to take notes, and then I want you to take the next one up. I did almost want to ask, I almost forgot. So for our staff member, Jackie, thank you. Do you have any pain points, anything you wanted to call out about this process that feels funky or just kind of irks you? Anything you want to share?
Yeah, so when I enter expenses daily, they never change. So they're always the same, and I never know how long it's going to take to get reimbursed. And I also really hate that I have to use my own money to purchase things for business reasons. And then we also have a hand raised from Heidi.
Heidi.
Hi, I'm just wondering, as part of this process, are the staff trained to know how to go in and fill out the forms in which they request reimbursement? Is there ever any hiccups that come along the way because they are doing it incorrectly, or maybe don't know how to do it at all?
Lakeisha, I don't recall having heard that there were issues with submission, right? This is a relatively new tool. It's fairly easy to use. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you.
All right, so let's continue on with the current state. Who is the next person? Again, I want you all to take notes. Who is the next person in our process flow here?
So that would be me. This is Savannah, and I'm the supervisor.
You're the supervisor. Thank you for joining us. What at a high level is your process?
So I review the expenses.
You review. Great. How long does it take you to do this review?
Takes about 30 minutes.
I'm going to call that 0.5 hours. What are some of the sub steps in your process? Like, what are the actions that you need to take?
Yeah, so I approve the totals, and I also confirm that all the receipts were included. I check for errors, and I add to the Excel tracking document. I add the information on the tracking document that's located on the shared drive.
Check for errors, and then you save it internally?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, you have a few more steps, so it takes a little bit longer for your process. Do you have any notes that you'd like to share, your pain points on this process?
Well, I seldom find errors. The most common is a missing receipt. And I hate having to work weekends, but this is a high priority for me.
So sometimes there's a missing receipt. Ooh, missing receipt. And then you said you work on weekends?
I do, but it's very important for me to get this done.
Okay, well, thank you for putting the time into it. My goodness, my computer's starting to have a heart attack. Working. Give me a second. Let my computer catch up. It only does this when everyone's watching, so that's okay. Okay, so I'm gonna hand over the mic. Somebody please raise your hand. You will take the action of asking for who is next. What are their steps? What are their pain points? What is their processing time? You don't have to have a belt for this. Having a conversation. I'll give you a chocolate. Laura Lynn, thank you.
If there's chocolate, I'm in.
Here you go.
Okay, so moving along. So is that are those all of the steps for your role, Savannah? I think we're moving on to the next person. Is that right?
Yes,
Correct.
that's correct.
Okay, so who's the next person in the process?
That's me, and my name is Lindsay. I'm the director.
Hi, Lindsay. Okay, so once Savannah approves these, what is your role? How does it get to you?
So I actually approve the expenses.
And then what is your process for approval? And this is still in that system that we talked about before, right?
Yes. Existence, yes. So
Okay.
I approve the totals and I confirm that all of the receipts were included.
So that's similar to the work that Savannah's already done, right?
Yes.
If you were asking me, yes. And based on the process description, yes. But Lakeisha would not have known that that's something that was done before. But it sounds very similar.
Okay, so are there any different things that you're looking for, or is this sort of, is the purpose of this, if you know, is this sort of like a backup step to verify that the work that has been done prior, you know, is correct?
So I'm responsible for approving the totals and making sure that all of the receipts were included with the expenses.
Okay. Any other details as part of that process?
Like some of my pain points.
Yeah, pain points and steps, and then I think we want to also get a feel for how long it takes you to do them, so we can add in the time on that step.
Okay, so it takes me about 15 minutes. And I rarely access the system. I have lots of meetings, so carving out time is really rough.
Okay. Sounds pretty straightforward for that. And then I think, are we ready to go on to the next person in the process?
Yep. Somebody else want to take the stage? I'm gonna start calling on people. I warned you, you will get wet. Amy?
Well, I was going to say I'm the next person in the process because it sounded to me like Laura Lynn asked that question. But do you prefer to get a different person to take the mic and question me?
I would love it. People in the room, let me hear you boom.
I don't mind.
Heidi, please.
This is Heidi. Thank you, Amy. So what is your role in the process at this point?
I'm the site coordinator.
Awesome. And what does your work entail? And how is it related to approving the expense reports?
I route the reports to the appropriate teams.
Okay, and how long does that take you?
About 2 minutes.
And how many do you typically have in your average week or day?
Well, they're submitted bi-weekly, so it takes me 2 minutes bi-weekly.
Oh,
I would
And-
say in terms of frequency, she wouldn't offhand know that, but we are going to take a data capture and we're going to take a look at that in a little bit. So she would need to, though, as we mentioned, we said what, 80 submissions that need to be submitted on a bi-weekly basis. So that would be our clip. She just wouldn't be aware of that offhand.
okay. And do you have any hiccups that you experience along the way, or find anything that you feel like would need to be improved, or that you hoped could be improved?
Well, to be quite honest, I spend my spare time looking for a job where I can apply my finance degree. This is really just a stepping stone for me.
Okay, so you don't feel challenged in your work?
Not at all. It's very, very boring.
Okay.
What are the steps in your process? You mentioned routing. Like, what does that look like for you? Like, is it just routing? Like you just look at it and you go, who's next?
Well, I review the sending department, and then I forward the ticket to the correct analyst.
Okay, so it does sound like it's forwarded.
Just want to chime in. We have about 30 minutes remaining in our session.
Perfect, thank you. All right, who's next? Who's gonna interview our SMEs next?
Okay, this is Brittany. I'm the financial analyst.
Okay. Who of our audience here would like to ask Brittany what her process steps are?
Sure, I will.
Lee, thank you.
Hey, so can you give us a brief overview of the process, like a high level overview, please?
So my job is to review the expenses, and I just confirm that the receipt totals match the requested amount.
Okay, and how many of those do you do a day or a week?
Time-wise, it takes about 45 minutes.
45 minutes, and is that just once a day?
So we're going to take a look at the data capture, the frequency in a little bit. We've got a couple data points that we can look at. As far as the staff are aware, I mean, they kind of just get them. They have a lot of different priorities, a couple different responsibilities. You'll note this when you go into an actual project. They're like, I mean, I don't know, I do them when they come to me, or when I have a moment, or when I'm not buried in emails, or when I didn't have a 5-hour Zoom that I had to go to, right? I do them when I get a chance to. So there's a little bit of a
points.
Perfect.
Really, I'm just really detail oriented, so I triple check the docs to make sure they're accurate.
Do you find that they're not accurate often?
They're pretty accurate as far as I can tell.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Lee.
You're welcome.
Who's next? Who in our audience would like to ask questions next?
I can. It's Bergen.
Thank you, Bergen. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, who is next in the process?
I am next. I'm the financial unit approver.
Okay, can you tell us the steps that you perform when approving?
I approve the expense. I approve the allocated fund total.
Okay, are you only looking at basically one piece of data?
Yes.
Okay.
About how long does that take? Like your process time?
Yeah, good question.
The process takes about 6 minutes.
Okay.
I
Bergen, do you have
also-
any other? Go ahead. Sorry.
I want to know if you feel that you being in this process at this point is value added, or is it something that could be absorbed by somebody before you or after?
So that is a little bit of jump to improve. I just want to
Yeah.
pause there. So we're going to analyze the value stream map next. And we're
Okay.
going to look at our data points. But what we're capturing is pain points, process steps, and process times.
Oh, that okay. how about pain points? Is there anything that's bugging you about the approval process?
I just want to know, why are we doing this project? I thought we solved it when we went paperless.
Okay.
It takes me no time.
Yeah.
Right, it sounds like they recently acquired the system, which was a massive process improvement. Maybe this staff member, it used to take them an hour and now it takes them, you know, a tenth of an hour, right? So this is improved. Why are we, you're going to find resistance in some of your projects and people are going to say, why are we even wasting our time looking at this process? Like, it's fine from this person's point of view, which is fine. I'm not picking on you, Michael. Thank you for sharing. Just for flavor, I wanted to add that. Who is our next Lean Six Sigma person? Guy goes to a therapist. He says, therapist, I think I'm a TP. I mean, I'm a pup tent. I'm a TP. I'm a pup tent. I'm a TP. I'm a pup tent. Therapist says, calm down. Your problem is you're too tense. Veronica, thank you.
Sure. So who's next in the process?
That would be me, the financial activity and control manager.
Great, Melissa. Can you walk me through the steps that you take?
My role is to allocate funds.
Okay. Is there any other steps? Is that you do that within the system, I assume?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. How long does that take you?
About 9 minutes.
And are there any pain points for you in this process?
Essentially, the policy states that these records are supposed to be maintained by our office. So we keep Excel as a QA against the system in case of an audit.
Okay.
Now, I'm sorry, I'm hearing a policy and I'm hearing an audit and a document control. So are there sub-steps? Are there other things you're doing?
Good question. So I'm confirming funding amounts, allocating funding, and logging it into Excel to track.
Okay. Thank you. And you said you log it because of this policy that you're aware of.
Correct.
Perfect. Thank you. To our evaluator, do you have any other questions?
Sorry, I have a question. So just to confirm, you're logging it into an Excel spreadsheet when it already exists in the system?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And as far as we're aware, there's some policy that says we have to do that. So we'll go back and we'll take a look at that potentially. Who's our next Lean Six Sigma person? I think we just need one more.
So that would be me, the supervisor again. So I confirm that the correct totals are received.
Back to the supervisor. Confirm. Great. What are your steps in that sort of process, the sub-steps?
So here I confirm totals received and I forward to staff for reimbursement. And this takes about 9 minutes.
9 minutes. 9 minutes is what? Is that like sorry, is it decimal? 0.15?
0.15.
Thank you. Public math. Cool. Do you have any additional, I know we asked you earlier what your pain points were. Do you have any other additional pain points that you wanted to share here?
No further pain points to add.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Thank you for doing that. That was a value stream walk discussion. That's something you would and could and should do with your subject matter experts, particularly if you don't have a process map already. Now, what this does is it allows everyone in the process to see where they sit in the process, how many approvals, how many handoffs, how many eyes on it. You can understand, we understand very intimately our steps in a process quite often, but we don't always know where did it come from before and what are they doing and what are they saving. So there was a question earlier about, well, are you doing this? Doesn't it sound like it was done before you? I mean, I know my role. I'm not really sure what's happening before or after. I did promise you, I know everyone's super excited. There's a little bit of a data capture that we have here. So we have here the steps, staff submitting daily, staff submitting biweekly expenses, and then review, approve, routing, review, approve, allocation, and then confirmation. So we're gonna look at this first data set right here. It was submitted at the beginning of March. It went through, these are the daily expenses and then the biweekly. A couple days, maybe a day later, we got a review here. Let me get a different color. And then a couple days, it's about maybe 6 days between these two steps. We've got 2 days, 2 days. Doesn't seem that bad, right? And then it gets done by the end of the month. So this one was submitted in terms of like the biweekly start. That's submitted and completed in a couple weeks. Okay. The second one, though, this is looking at the month of February. So this submission for the biweekly started on February 12th. And it's went to the supervisor. Supervisor worked on it fairly quickly. Now the director, though, had a couple of weeks before they were able to get to it. Just one day or a day or two between that one and the site coordinator, it looks like. A couple days between that one and the financial analyst, but then almost a month before it went to the financial unit approver. So going from there, same day for the next step, and then one day for the next. So they both submitted. Well, they submitted at different times. This one in March, this one in February, but they received them both at the same time. So the variation in outcomes is huge, right? And I do want to say that this is fake data. We've made it up, entirely fabricated. But all of the examples we're giving here are examples that we've seen in projects. So this is fabricated real situations, right? Submitted both a month apart, received them both at the same time. That's a lot of variation in our outcomes. Now, does anybody see any patterns in this data that they want to call out? Any sort of indication that they think something might be going on here? I'll make it a little bigger. Okay if you don't. Brittany.
It looks like the financial unit approver kind of lets it bulk up in the inbox and then does a bulk approval.
It's entirely likely that the financial unit approver is receiving them because this one was technically done right on at 3:25, right, on March 25th, and this one was done on March 3rd, but they worked on them on March 26th. And both of these files got worked on at the same day within 15 minutes of each other. So yes, great eye. There is batching being done here. We're going to add these times to our value stream map. So what we have over here is the allocated wait times. These are averages. So I'm going to add these to our value stream map real quick and see if I can see it in the same data capture. All right, what do we got? 861, 861, 1680, 1684, and 8. All right. Now, if we look at it this way, are there any other instances of batching, or is there any other indication that that might be happening? We'll look at our average wait times. And the ones that are high up are pretty spot on, right? But this one here, I'm gonna use the highlighter function. This one, 80%, it highlights only when everyone's looking. The 80% one, or the 80%, the 80 hours one, that's what? How many working weeks? It's 40 hours in a work week, that's 2 weeks. Now that's an average, which means that this person is batching on a monthly basis, right? All right, what about this other one here, 60? 60 hours is again the sort of center point, which means that there are some who are waiting longer. So if you double that, it's going to be 120, which means that they're batching every 40, 80, that's 3 weeks. So on every 3 week rolling basis, the staff member is probably looking at these. And this one's about once a week. Everyone sort of see how I got to those numbers, more or less. All right, let's do a quick discussion around the value added steps. First off, first and foremost, before we start talking about value add, who's our customer? Is it the sponsor? Is it the director? Is it who's our customer? Who's consuming
the employee who's being reimbursed?
Thank you, Melissa. Perfect. Yes, the employee who's being reimbursed. So the start of our process is, it feels like it should be when they submit on a daily basis, right? But the trigger at the start, the kickoff of this process is when they submit the biweekly. So our actual kickoff is right here. This is the process that we're going to evaluate. All right, the staff member is uploading receipts, and then they're approving totals, and then including a business need. We don't exactly know why we're doing each of these things. We feel like receipts are probably a good sort of audit tracking thing, but let's just hold on to that for a second. I'm gonna put a pin in that. Staff members being asked to do it. Supervisor review, we're approving the totals, which the staff member already sort of reviewed, but maybe there's some policy that says we have to have a pair of eyes on it. We're reviewing the receipts. Does that feel like a value add, non-value add, potentially wasteful to anyone? At this point, please just unmute yourselves. Don't worry about the hand raise function. We're reviewing the receipts. Now, what are we really checking for? I mean, if the receipts were uploaded, if the system could have some way to confirm that the receipts were loaded, then the staff member wouldn't have to check them, right? If they could be input and that sort of thing. So we're going to call this out as a potential waste. Checking for errors. Value add, non-value add. Value add. Potentially, does the customer care if you check for errors? I mean, they definitely want to know that they get reimbursed the correct amount. I'm going to put a pin in that one. I'm going to say there's something questionable there. I mean, if the system could confirm the receipt total matches the, the requested total, there might be something there that we can reduce, control, or eliminate. Saving to the internal drive. So exporting this into an Excel file. Somebody pulled this out earlier and said, well, your system's already catching it, right? So why are you putting in an internal drive? Does this feel value add, wasteful?
Wasteful.
Wasteful, right? Now, here's the point at which somebody might say, well, we absolutely have to have this for that policy reason that we talked about earlier, right? So let's say we had a little bit of pushback on that. I'm going to put a question mark on that one as well. Like, is this something that we absolutely have to do for audit reasons, for tracing? Let's hold on to that for just a moment. The director is approving the totals. How do we feel about that step?
It seems like a total duplication of the prior step.
This definitely feels like rework. They're not checking for anything different. The supervisors are already looking, they're checking for errors, and then confirming their receipts. So yeah, each of these steps has already been done before. The supervisor's essentially rubber stamping it. All right, awesome. But maybe there's a policy, maybe somebody wants to push back, but I haven't seen any at the moment. Site coordinator, forward check which department is going to, and then forward it. How do we feel about this step?
Waste.
Waste, why? I mean, it needs to get forwarded.
I wonder if it can be done automatically or if it can be batched with a different part of the process. If it takes that one person such a short period of time, a lot of the time that's being spent is so many people in the process, and it seems like the actual work that's required is so little for each person. So if we can combine that with something else or automate it, we might be able to eliminate that step altogether.
Right. It might be worth, and I'm trying not to jump to improve, but it might be worth seeing if the employee ID number is there, could that be an indicator for the system to route it on its own? Based on this employee ID, it should know which department they're in, so it should route to that area for that financial unit approver, right? There might be an opportunity there. Trying not to jump to improve.
This job is already boring enough. You're eliminating my position.
So lean does not stand for less employees are needed, right? LEAN does not mean less employees are needed. You mentioned you have a degree, you have a finance degree. I would love to have you. One of my recommendations to our sponsor, Lakeisha, is hopefully going to be that we can find some area where your talents, your skills, your degree can actually be put to a use that will be value added to the customer. So in the current state, it's absolutely necessary. Thank you, we appreciate it. But we want to make sure that we're moving the ball forward and that the work that you are doing feels valuable. I don't want you looking for other jobs. I want you to be here and really be connected to the work that you're doing. It's all finance related, so hopefully there's something here we can find your strengths for. Thank you for calling that out. All right, so, okay, so the financial analyst, reviewing the expenses 3 times, I might add, reviewing the totals, making sure they match. How about this step?
Wasteful, because it should have already been done earlier in the process.
Okay. Now all right, financial analyst. Who was our financial analyst?
That was me, Brittany.
Brittany, thank you. You checked 3 times for errors. We appreciate your efforts and your diligence. This might be a time where I might expect that since you have been checking them 3 times, you'd say, no, this is absolutely necessary. I am the gatekeeper. I am the shield bearer of any sort of audit or any of that thing. So we could say, okay, how about, I'm trying not to jump to improve, but we're short on time. How about instead of checking 3 times for errors, you check twice for errors, right? How about you check 3 times for errors, but you identify the errors that you find, and then we spend more time looking for those and less time looking for the things that are never wrong, right? That sort of thing. So these become the opportunities. So maybe we say this becomes, instead of 3, this becomes 2. Whoop. What does that do to our process time, right? That it was 0.75, so our process time is likely to be 0.5 now. That's a process improvement. That times 80 times that we're doing this process, that sort of thing. So
it did indicate that there are no errors or very little errors.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, and I can tell you why, from looking at the process flow, there are several people looking for errors at this point, errors that hopefully the system might be smart enough to catch in this fancy new tool, right? Now, I'll give you a bit of backstory. Part of the reason processes like this exist is because, as we mentioned, they just got this fancy new system. They got a new tool, it was shiny. So they took their process exactly as it existed in the paper world and put it into this fancy new tool, without doing a process review of going, well, what can the system potentially do for us? They just said, oh, I review now in the paper process, I'll review then in the digital, but I'll have a digital file to look at instead of a paper printed out. There's an environmental impact, yes, but there are process benefits to be gained from considering, does it still make sense to go through this flow as it currently stands? Financial unit approver, approved totals. I think we're all kind of on the bandwagon here. Confirming the amounts, boom.
Is this Groundhog's Day?
Is it?
It seems like Groundhog's Day with every step in the process.
Confirming the amounts, everyone is very attached to their roles, and they really, believe that this absolutely must be done in the way that it currently is. Now, we called out saving to the internal drive earlier, right? This person is also saving it internally. So if we were to receive pushback from one of these or the other, we might say, great, you know what, for the policy reasons, as a light recommendation, a baby step towards improvement, let's pick one spot or the other to do this step in, right? And if we were going to do that, I'd probably pick the one that has less processing time. So this one over here has 0.5 and this other one has 0.15. So if I were going to make a recommendation around this specific document, I'd say, tell the supervisor she doesn't have to do that particular step anymore of putting it into some external logging tracking. Somebody's going to do it once it gets to the final stage for audit purposes, right? So that might be one recommendation. Okay, and then supervisor confirming the totals. Again, doing another confirmation. It definitely wanted to be forwarded to the staff. What about this step of forwarding it to the staff? Do we feel like that's value add?
Is that something the system can do automatically on an approval workflow?
Why are we sending it once everything's been approved? The supervisor's already approved it, the financial unit approver's already approved it. Why is it going to the supervisor? Just send it to the staff member. I promise if there's an error, they will confirm that and they'll let you know, right? So this forwarding itself could be another potential improvement. So this was a quick waste walk here. In terms of potential improvements, what do we think we would want to recommend to our sponsor? What's going to have the largest impact, maybe the least amount of change resistance?
I would say removing the extraneous review steps, especially for the people who indicated that they either didn't really have time or that it was a burden to them. I can't remember exactly which, but somebody was working on the weekends and it was important to her, but then other people were like, oh, I don't even know why I'm doing this. So eliminate those ones that are not necessary and that the person doesn't feel strongly about retaining that step.
Yeah, I mean, you could go by saying the people who are really, really connected to their jobs in terms of this particular step. I'm not saying let people go. Saying the people who are really they're going to be your biggest resistors. You might say, okay, we'll leave that as it is for the moment. Let's look at the areas where the coordinator who said I'm looking for jobs with my finance degree. What if we said, hey, what if we were to take some of your knowledge and training and you were to assist the financial analyst, right? If we could assign you a couple units, you could do the easy ones or whatever the case is, right? What that would do to that person's time is it would go then from checking twice to checking once, and you have an additional resource. So that's going to save us an additional. So it was taking 45 minutes. Now it's 15 minutes because we have an additional resource sort of parsing it out, right? So that's the way that would look on there. So 15 minutes times.
Just a friendly reminder. We have just under 10 minutes.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for the reminder. I'm going to do one more thing. Our staff member. Now you mentioned, I'm gonna address the bull in the space at the moment. You mentioned that your expenses don't change. Who's our staff member?
Me. Yeah, they never change. They're always the same.
Okay, so you're going through and from my conversation with you, you used to go to different sites and your parking would be $15 here and then $10 at that location. And you used to have to pay for your meals and that sort of thing or your gas. You have now a company car. You can have meals paid for by whatever cafeteria the location is offering, or you bring your own lunch as should provide. And so you're just paying for parking. Now, you're also said that you're going to the same location every day.
Yes.
So your parking charges are consistent.
Mhm.
Does anybody have any ideas around that?
Well, that should be automated. And then the only way that it would fall through is if it went outside the parameter of what you know that expense is charging. So only if it should only, stand out if it's going above what that fee is.
Right. So let's say your fee is $10 a day. Are you suggesting, was it Heidi, that we only do these extra approvals if that fee is something other than $10?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so that might reduce the number of iterations. I mean, if Jackie went to go cover someone else on their shift, had to go to a different location, right? That might be something, or if the structure was down and she had to park across the street and pay $15 instead of $10, that might be something. That would reduce the number of iterations for this entire process, right? Because we're just doing the approvals. We basically say only go through all of this. The future state might be biweekly submit of a set standard amount, and then, jump straight to the end where they allocate and approve, right? Because the supervisor, the director, they already approved that your parking charges are going to be there. If there's anything else anomalous, we can go through this mess.
Maybe
yeah.
it could be like eco time, which our HR person has pre-populated, and we only have to change it if it actually is different. So
Yeah.
in essence, we're only entering exceptions.
Absolutely. So what would that do to our process time? We said it was 6 minutes per iteration, right? 6 minutes per iteration. 6 minutes. Now we're going to do some math here. So does anybody have a calculator who wants to be my math magician? Everyone has a calculator in the computers. Come on, folks. Phones, smartphones. Somebody has a smartphone? 6 minutes. Somebody's going to do this. Lee, I see you reaching over. Thank you. 6 minutes of processing time. Times, we got 852, so 8 times 5 is 40, times 2 is 80, so times 80 staff members doing this process.
480.
Times, I'm sorry?
That's 480.
Okay, times, they're doing this, we said, on a daily basis, so that's biweekly would be 510, so times 10 instances, right, per biweekly pay period, right? There's 26 biweekly pay periods at which they would be submitting these expenses, right? Times, Lakeisha, how much are we, what's our hourly cost for the staff members?
$20.
$20. All right, so if we're saving 6 minutes for every staff member who's doing this process, we're gonna say you have a set standard cost and only let us know if something's weird. 6 minutes times 80 staff members times 10 days that they're doing this times 26 pay periods times $20 an hour. What's our outcome?
This is a lot of money, so somebody needs to double check it, but I have just under 2.4 million.
I think we need to divide by 60 minutes.
Oh yes, divide by 60 minutes. Thank you, because we're not doing hourly.
Yeah,
Divide by 60 minutes.
40.1.
Yeah.
41,000. That sounds much.
Thank you. Good catch. So that's why, again, I knew there was a reason I was doing decimals, because this is like 0.1 minutes would make more sense for the hourly calculation. So 0.1 would actually hours. So $41,000. So if we were to make just this one change, it'd be $41,000.
It's a Greenbelt project right there.
That's a Greenbelt project. And that's sort of the underlying theme of this, right? Do not be afraid about the savings. If you want to do a green belt or a black belt, don't box yourself in by saying, yeah, I don't think I can do the savings amount. I'm probably going to fail the class. I saw a submission that saved something like $274. That's okay, because there were complement benefits. There were processes. There were other people in the process that were not captured in this particular process map that will end up having other benefits, right? Including, we've done this process analysis. Now we all know, right? One of the pain points from our sponsor was we don't know the overall flow. Everyone blames someone else for the lack, of consistency in the process. Well, now we can all have a clear understanding. And if our financial unit approver has a question about, did the supervisor review XYZ thing, we now have a relationship that has been built, hopefully, from this process discussion to say, hey, when you go through and you do this report, when you're saving to the shared drive, maybe we can save it in a Google folder or something, right? This ideas come out of this that say, Can I access that folder or that file so that I don't have to create my own and reference it later? Like there's opportunities there. Cool. So controls should be put in place. How can we make this error proof, right? So the system hopefully has a bunch of different tools and widgets in there, confirming the totals, maybe in terms of uploading receipts. If we said, hey, they upload their receipts daily, well, sometimes they're missing, right? How hard is it to put one of those little red boxes that says, if this field is missing, do not allow them to submit, right? So there are controls that can get put in place. Hopefully with this new system, I'm sure there's some readily available. If not, what other controls could be put in place? I mean, if our existing system could tell us, hey, this submission has been waiting 3 weeks, right? That might come outside our goal. Let's prioritize this. Let's escalate it, right? Have an escalation plan. That might be one way we can do it. Because the system, as we saw from our data set, does collect the timestamps for when these pieces are finished. So again, just wanted to highlight this is how you would go through a project, right? You talk with your sponsor, you define, you understand as much as you can about high level, what exactly are we looking at? Then you work with your subject matter experts to flesh it out, create a process map, create a value stream map, gather some pain points. I might do some of this conversation one-on-one. If there were a lot of steps in this process, I might meet with Lee and then meet with Kumar and then meet with Brittany and say, what are your steps? And then map this out so that we can jump straight into our Kaizen where we're doing the waste walk discussion, right? But it was important to table it in what is Lean Six Sigma, right? What are these tools that I'm going to be using? And then to, as Amy called out, make sure that people don't feel like I'm saying, you're no longer going to be needed anymore. Thank you for your service. Goodbye, right? It's about saying, I understand, Amy, you've got 40 different things that you're working on. You're very busy. You're working overtime. You're working weekends. So let's not let that happen, right? Let's get back to our 40-hour work weeks. Let's right size our jobs. And a lot of that really, time and time again, is shown to be super successful. We are at 12:01. Thank you all for sticking it out with us. Please give us any feedback via email or in the chat. I will remain here for a little bit if anyone has questions. Otherwise, have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, Tony.
Please.
We're in the software business, right? We're a software development group.
Okay.
And people come to say, this is something you need to do. How do we use tools like this to decide, I guess, whether what they're requesting is worth the effort or not?
Sort of like what we did at the very end, where we said, hey, there's all these different ideas, right? The one of like, hey, if we were to just submit the ones that were outside of $10, right? We can look at, how would that impact everyone's processing times? I mean, that means that I'd have less to check, and that we could reduce, as I marked through with some of these, this took me 75 or 0.75, it's now going to take 0.25 because I'm not checking 30 fields, I'm checking 10, that sort of thing.
So you're saying calculate what it's costing them that it would save, and then kind of map it to what it would cost us to develop the system in a sense?
That's definitely one approach. Yeah, because essentially, you said you're in the software system, in the software area, right? How much would it save to come off of a mainframe system, right? Versus how much would it cost to figure out what all that takes? It's massive on both ends.
Right.
But by and large, coming off a mainframe system over the long term will save you money. So hopefully that helps.
I mean that's the thought, but it's not clear that that's actually true. So how do you show that that's true, right? That's what I'm trying to get to.
So
because a lot of times cloud systems may cost more, but it's modern and people get more features out of it, right? So there's a trade-off.
So if you have data, that's where it's going to be super helpful. So we had some, in this example, we had some data points. So we could say, I'm not just pulling information out of thin air. Our current process is showing this is how much time it's taking, right? Process observations go a long way. Defect counts, customer voice of customers may be huge. So if you have some things that your customer's saying, hey, this is super wrong, and I'm going to go somewhere else if you guys don't fix it, that, that's a burning platform. So those are some tools that you can leverage there.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. OSI staff, thank you for your help.